different players. I think it's a better team than it was last year. But my point is last year they weren't a different team in October than they were in September, except for trading Trent Richardson. They weren't a different roster in December than they were in October, yet they played better and won with Hoyer than they did after he went out last year. So while I agree that his play has been subpar for the last few weeks and that you can't give him credit for all of these wins, he clearly elevates the level of players around him. He also has the respect of his teammates, so let's not act like he's just been the magic 11th man on the field and anybody else would have done it, because nobody else did.
Yeah, I can't disagree with that. You know, my only thing here is obviously the coach is not completely in control of the situation, if you know what I mean. We're at the point here where he says, we're going to go look at the film, we're going to come back and decide. That means that Farmer has a place in the discussion, which is
For
fine
sure.
if that's how you're running your team. But
I agree, and I know Farmer does. Mike Pettine said that yesterday. He said the process that this has to go through. And listen, understand, is that my whole conversation could be 100% different 7 days from now. It's simple. I mean, it's simple math. When I've said it from the first week of this season, I said the minute that these Browns are not anymore, if we're not playing for competitive reasons, we're no longer playing to make the playoffs. At that point, whether it's week 3, 5, 10, 15, whatever it is, at that point, it's all Manziel all the time, because you have to find out before you get to the end of the season. I do agree with that, unless Brian Hoyer keeps winning, they make the playoffs, and then you find yourself in a tricky situation. And that's where they're at right now. To me, like I told Jeff Gorman earlier, Bill, I don't know what you think, but this thing could answer itself a week from now. Plain and simple. If you go out here this week and lose, nothing that we're talking about matters, because you are just going to play him for the rest of the season and let him get some experience, because at 7-6, you'll be 3 games back in the division with 3 to play, and you really would be out of contention at that point.
yeah, I was listening to part of your interview with Jeff, and I do agree with that. You know, if you're in the hunt for the playoffs, you go with what's been working all this time. Whether it's been working 100% or working 70%, that doesn't make a difference. Okay, they're 7-5. They have an opportunity to go to maybe 10-6 at this point, and maybe get that second wild card spot. Maybe not, but as long as they're still competitive, we shouldn't be shuffling the cards, and that's all there is to it. You know, injury is a different story.
Well, exactly. Way different story. But here's the thing. It's not even the wild card. I'm not chasing the wild card. I won't even fight for that, because there are a lot of tiebreakers that the Browns lose. So I don't even care about the wild card. I'm simply talking about the division. The entire division is in second place behind Cincinnati, 1.5 games back, and the Browns have 2 division games left, including one against Cincinnati. So I am only looking at the division. I'm not holding out hope. I don't think the North is going to get a wild card. I thought they would, but after this past weekend where 3 teams lost, I don't think second place in the North is going to get a wild card. I think that they may be the 10-plus win team that doesn't make the playoffs, is whoever finishes second in the North. So I don't think there is a wild card to play for, but there's 4 games left for these teams, and they're all within a game and a half of each other. So I do believe that the division is still very much in play, and that is different. And I just think that once that conversation changed, I just think it's hard to look at your veterans and say we're playing the rookie now, because they're going to go, well, hell, why didn't you do that from the beginning? You're going to wait until we get to this point in the season, and we already have enough other problems that we're going to go with the kid. And I think that's what Mike Pettine's thinking about right now. And I think when he said yesterday that I'm not going to make a permanent decision, I'm simply going to worry about winning this week, that was his out to perhaps say, I'm going to stick with Brian Hoyer one more week, and I'm going to dance with who brought us here, and let's see what happens.
Right, and for the Manziel apologists, excuse me, for the Manziel apologists, you have to understand, it's not like he was thrown in September and said sink or swim. All right? This is obviously very deliberate that they've sat him on the bench all this time to learn from the starting quarterback, whether the starting quarterback's a teacher or not. You know, this is where the head coach and the offensive coordinator and the quarterback's coach said, sit down here and watch what this guy does, because you are going with these guys, because you are going to be replacing him sooner or later down the road. But that doesn't mean you're starting next week. And you know, I would be just the same if it was replacing Eli Manning with Ryan Nassib. I'd be saying the same thing. So.
Well, we're going to find out. As I said, we'll know here in the next, and maybe not even by tomorrow. That's the other thing is Mike Pettine said, you know what? We've got both guys preparing for this game. We may not even have a decision. I hope to have it Wednesday, but I may not. And if I don't, I'm not going to say anything to anybody because I don't have any idea right now where we're going to go. And I'll tell you what, man, I'll agree with one thing that I've heard some people say. Brian Hoyer is the safer play. If Mike Pettine is going for the safe move, if he's going for that, then it's clearly Brian Hoyer. If he is going for the bold, look at me, I'm going to shake it up and play the kid, then he goes with Manziel. But I think that we've seen all season Mike Pettine leans towards the conservative. He leans towards the safer play because safer play is also code word most of the time for smarter play as well. And as much as some people try to reinvent the wheel, sometimes it's better to be smarter in the situation there as well. And I do believe playing it safe is going with Brian Hoyer. And I think for this week, and the fact that he said it the way he did, he left himself wide open to say, listen, I'm not talking about a week from now. I'm saying this week against a playoff caliber Colts, I think Brian Hoyer gives us our best chance to win this week. He left himself open, but he also has time to change his mind. So I think this is a very interesting week in the evolution of Mike Pettine as a head coach as well.
Yeah, and we're going to see now what kind of stones this guy really has.
Yeah,
because he's got to stick to his decision at this point, whatever that decision is.
See,
he can't be swayed by the guys down in Harry Buffalo on Sunday morning complaining about how well they play.
That's what's got me thinking he sticks with Hoyer is what you just said. Just look, I'm just analyzing the same information that we've all got, what you just said, because I thought, and this is why when on Sunday, when we came on the air Monday, I said there's no way they go back to Hoyer because of what you just said. You have to, if whatever you do, I think you stick with it for the rest of the season. Yesterday, right, when he was asked, is this going to be your final quarterback decision of the season? He said, I don't want to say that. I don't want to say that. If his mind was made up on Manziel, I think he would have maybe confirmed that I do think if I make it, whatever we do, this is going to be it. I think by saying that, because you don't go back to Hoyer is what I'm saying. So if the decision is Manziel, it is Manziel for the rest of the season. When he said, I don't want to paint myself into the corner of the same quarterback the rest of the season, that to me says Hoyer because you're leaving the door open for Manziel 1 week from now. But if you go Manziel, how can you leave the door open for Hoyer again? Because then what are you going to tell Manziel? Well, kid, if you don't do well, you got the guy who you just replaced waiting to take your spot. You don't do that to the rookie, just like you don't send Hoyer out there and say, one bad snap and this kid's going in. So I think he left himself open. I believe Mike Pettine was leaning Manziel on Sunday, and I think come Monday night, he had talked himself out of it, and now what's going to be interesting is who's the final voice in the ear and what sways his final decision come tomorrow.
And just by the same point, suppose he puts Manziel in and Manziel gets hurt. Then you've got to come back to Hoyer. You have no choice. So it's a completely different situation again. Do you say, well, Brian, I told you because I thought Johnny gave us the better chance to win, but now that Johnny's hurt, you're all I've got.
I hear you there, too. I hear you there as well, too, So those are all things that are in play. But I was 100% convinced that Brian Hoyer's run was over and that they were going with Manziel. And then yesterday, he opened that door back up, and I said, man, why did he do that? Either he is really trying to screw with Indianapolis right now, or he truly is going to do the impossible. But then again, he did the impossible anyway, because he's one of the few coaches that would have not just thrown the rookie out there from the beginning and just given up on this season. So, man, it's an interesting call, and as you said, it's a Stones call for sure, because it's a pass or fail decision. I mean, it's one that people will look back on and go, hey, man, that was what you had to do, or it goes the other way. But it'll be very interesting. But I just think that he left himself open. I said, man, now I'm not sure. So that makes this a whole lot more interesting. What were your thoughts in general on that Browns game outside of the quarterback part of the situation? Running game got back in trouble again, but a lot of that has to be equated to the defense that they played. I mean, Buffalo, we saw some good fronts. We saw a couple of good ones this year on the Browns side. Man, that's the best one to me. That what they've done up front there, amazing. I love those guys, and it also gets my mouth watering for perhaps the next few years what they can hopefully grow this defense into here in Cleveland, being that it's a similar, the same coaching staff. But, man, that Buffalo defense has a lot to do with the way the Browns played the other day.
Yeah, no question about that. I mean, you consider all the adversity that Buffalo has been facing with the weather and whatnot. The fact that they were able to come out and put a good product on the field was surprising to a lot. Of surprised as much because I know they were working really hard, and we saw what they did in Detroit against the Jets, 2 games ago. So, I look at what happened on Sunday, and I say, well, you know what? Again, this is a team that has made some improvements, but they still have a couple of rungs to climb on the ladder. They still have a little bit of a ways to go. And again, part of the reason why the running game was in trouble was also because the number of injuries the team has suffered on the offensive line, and just injuries in general. You look at the number of teams that have injuries, more than 10 players done for any significant amount of time or out for the season, and Cleveland is right up there with a couple of other teams in having the most number of guys hurt this season.
Oh, yeah, and we've talked about that here off and on, especially the last few weeks. Like, at what point does, next man up is next man up, but at what point does it become, too much for a team to deal with? But this is for all teams, as you said. This is that it's attrition, man, at the end of a football season. And literally the strong survive, the healthy survive, the ones who can buck it up. But, man, looking around, you just mentioned these were two teams here fighting for playoff competition. And then you've got that all around. This AFC is just – there's so many teams. There's going to be teams that with great seasons here or good seasons here that missed out on the playoffs. The AFC just completely bunched up here coming down the stretch, man. It's going to be a lot of fun because everybody plays everybody. Like San Diego, they play all the teams, that they need to deal with here. They've got Denver, they've got New England, they've got Kansas City. Kansas City's got Pittsburgh and San Diego in their stretch. Seattle has the 49ers and the Cardinals and the Eagles, all the teams that they need to deal with over there. So on and so forth. Pittsburgh's got the Chiefs and the Bengals twice. The Browns have the Bengals in Baltimore and the Colts, all playoff teams. Buffalo's got Denver, Green Bay, New England. I mean, there are some it all plays itself out where the elimination over the next few weeks will be great. But this is going to be a fun final month of the season here. I saw some people, and I'm not big on overstatement, but December 2014 may be the most interesting competitive month in NFL regular season history, man.
And not only that, we may be looking at the very last month of the way the NFL runs, under the current rules, because we may see some changes come February and March of 2015 in how the NFL operates. And that's going to be interesting in itself because a lot of what's going to change is based on what happened in the past week plus. Number one, the Ray Rice issue being resolved to his satisfaction, and a bunch of other things as far as the TV deals are concerned as well. So, we're looking at the change right in front of us as we watch the changing face of the NFL.
Oh, yeah, for sure, my man. And that's going to be something to talk about looking ahead. But, man, just